The Tower of the Flock, mentioned in that verse, was first mentioned in Genesis as the Tower of Adair, or Migdal Adair, Tower of the Flock. And let me just read you from a classic work by Alfred Edersheim. This is called The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah. It's published in 1971. It says that the Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem was a settled conviction. Equally so was the belief that he was to be revealed from Migdal Eder, the Tower of the Flock. And on the second floor of the museum, we have a kind of representation of that up in the biblical archaeology section. This Migdal Eder was not the watchtower for the ordinary flocks, which pasture on the barren sheep ground beyond Bethlehem, but they lay close to the town on the road to Jerusalem. A passage in the Mishnah leads to the conclusion that the flocks which pastured there were destined for temple sacrifice. So these sheep were being raised to be sacrificed on the altar in the temple. And accordingly that the shepherds who watched over them were not ordinary shepherds. These flocks lay out all year round, since they are spoken of in the fields 30 days before Passover, that is in the month of February, when in Palestine the average rainfall is nearly greatest. Okay, usually Passover is the month after, in March, April, that particular area, the springtime. Thus, Jewish tradition is in some dim manner apprehended the first revelation of the Messiah from that Migdal Eder, where shepherds watch the temple flocks all the year round. Okay, watch the flocks destined for sacrificial services in the very place consecrated by tradition as that where the Messiah was to be first revealed. And that's what Micah said, that the first dominion would come to Migdal Eder, the Tower of the Flock, first. This is near the location where Rachel, back in the book of Genesis, chapter 35, where she is giving birth to Benjamin there. She and Jacob are making their way. They've come from Jerusalem. They're on their way to Bethlehem. And on this road, on this 5-mile stretch from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, Rachel is having trouble with the pregnancy there. And it's heavy labor, it's hard labor, and she ends up dying, giving birth. She names the child Benoni, son of my sorrow, there. But Jacob takes it and says, no, we're calling him Benjamin, son of my right hand, there. Son of my sorrow, Jesus' first coming, a man of sorrows. Son of my right hand, second coming, where he's coming as the blessed king, right? The conquering lion of the tribe of Judah there. And so this is why when the children of Bethlehem were killed by Herod, the scriptures mentioned this particular setting, Rachel dying and childbirth there, and talking about the children of Rachel. There's weeping there, and mourning, and distress there. And so that little odd phrase, that odd story about Rachel and Rachel's children goes back to Genesis, and where we mentioned first the Tower of the Flock, which just happens to be where Micah says the Messiah is going to be revealed first there, in the Tower of the Flock. An article that I've picked up recently, doing some more research on this topic, about there being no room in the inn. The word inn in the Greek being the word kataluma there. And it's translated as inn in our Bibles, but it's not the usual word for inn. It's better translated as guest room or guest chamber there. And when Luke says there was no room in the inn, he's not talking about a room in a building. He's talking about space in a room there. There was no space in this guest chamber, which usually is the upper level where the living quarters were for the humans. The animals were down on the first floor near the door where the manger was. And the manger was not of wood, because that was very scarce in that area. The manger is made of stone there. Okay? And it is a secure kind of location, a feeding trough for the animals there. So there's no room on this upper level. So if the guests were already there, they'd have to be moved downward. Micah's prophecy, though, talks about the guest chamber or the room being in the lower level. When you read Edersheim's book, The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah, you find out that this military watchtower, the book of Genesis, is transformed in the centuries past, or centuries following, into the area where the priests would inspect newborn lambs of this flock that was destined for temple sacrifice. They would inspect these newborn lambs, and as soon as the lambs were born, they would wash the lambs off with strips of cloth, with swaddling clothes there. They would clean the lambs off, and then lambs would be fed there, and they would inspect the lambs, for 4 days there to make sure they were without spot and without blemish, because you could not offer a spotched, blemished lamb on the altar, for sacrifice. They had to be a perfect lamb there. And so this is the area, this lower level of Migdal Eder, where the lambs were inspected for sacrifice. So interesting. When Jesus makes his appearance with John the Baptist refers to Jesus as the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. And it's just so fascinating how all of this kind of just ties together. And it's just mind-blowing, right? Where was Jesus born? Scriptures talk about this. We said we'd get to this point. The quest begins in Genesis 35, 16 through 21. Okay? This is the first mention of Bethlehem in the Bible. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem Ephratah. And Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt also have this son also. Thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, for she died in childbirth, that she called his name Benoni, or son of my sorrow, there. But his father called him Benjamin, son of my right hand. Son of my sorrow. That's the first coming of Christ, right? He's a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. There, Isaiah 53 tells us that. But the father said, no, we're not calling him son of my sorrow. We're calling him Benjamin, son of my right hand, which is more in keeping with the second coming of Christ, isn't it? Where he's actually sitting on the throne at the right hand of the Father. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave until this day. And Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Adar, which is translated as the tower of the flock. Okay, the tower of the flock. If you remember when Herod sacrificed those children, those male babies, those male younglings, there's a little passage there that talks about Rachel mourning for her children there. And that goes back to this passage here, okay, because this is happening in the same area in Bethlehem. And the tower of Edar, or the tower of the flock, is mentioned again. Okay. The quest continues with Numbers 24, 17 to 19. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star, capital S, out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion. That's the king, right? And shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. Micah 4:8. This is the verse that we should be talking a lot more about during Christmas time, I think. But we don't go to Micah 4. We always go to Micah 5. And thou, O tower of the flock, which is the birthplace, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto thee, the tower, shall it come, even the first dominion, the kingdom, which means the king, shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. Daughter of Jerusalem being Bethlehem. Okay? But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. So we talk about a birth here, but this is the birth of someone whose goings forth have been of old, from everlasting. Okay? We're talking about the birth of an eternal person. Tilt, right? He's an eternal person, but yet he's being born here. Okay? That's the miracle of the incarnation. Genesis 3:15, the very first messianic prophecy of Scripture. Genesis 3:15, the time of the curse of the serpent, and with Adam and Eve and all of that. And God talks about the seed of the woman there, the seed of the woman. See, the seed doesn't come from the woman. The seed, the sperm, comes from the male, right? But the seed of the woman, that would be a veiled reference to virgin birth. And then he talks about how the serpent will bruise his heel, the heel of the seed, his heel singular, not heels, but heel, which is a reference to crucifixion. Roman crucifixion, okay, not Persian crucifixion. For Persians started crucifixion. The Romans took it and refined it so it'd be more tortuous. They would put the right foot under the left foot on top, and drive a 9-inch nail through the arches of both feet, and then 5-inch spikes through the wrists there, and the person would hang there with their back scraping up and down on the vertical support there, and your right heel is pushing down on that spike to lift your lungs up, to exhale that old air out, and then of course gravity would cause your weight to sink back down again, and then you had to push back up again just to breathe, and over and over and over. And the bruising of the right heel, one heel, okay, crucifixion. And then Genesis 3:15 goes on to say, yes, the serpent will bruise his heel, but he, the seed, shall crush his head. He shall crush the head of the serpent, right? And that, of course, happened in the power of the resurrection there. Satan is a defeated foe, right? He's on borrowed time. Is what he is, okay? The Tower of the Flock was originally constructed as a military lookout, especially in the day of Rachel and Israel, Jacob. In the days of Herod, it was used by the priests of Jerusalem to select a lamb for sacrificial offering at the Passover. That's because on the roadway between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, that 5 miles or so of roadway, there was a flock out there all year long with special shepherds that raised special sheep just for temple sacrifice. And the sheep, the newborn lambs, would be inspected in this Tower of the Flock. Okay, it has a new purpose now. Not a military watchtower here, but an inspection site with a guest room on the top and a manger on the bottom where the animals were kept and where the lambs were inspected. And the lambs would have been washed off, the blood and the fluids of childbirth would have been wiped off those lambs with strips of clothing there, which are called swaddling clothes. Okay, swaddling clothes. So they had a manger, they had swaddling clothes present in the lower level of the Tower of the Flock. And you know when the angels gave the shepherds the address of where they would find the child, the shepherds knew exactly where to go. You shall find him wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And it says, with haste they went there. They didn't go, where's that? You know, they knew exactly where to go. So they went to the Tower of the Flock. They kept gauze-like cloth to clean and inspect the appropriate lamb. All right, the lambs had to be inspected because they couldn't have any spots or blemishes to be sacrificed. They had to be perfect. The shepherds knew specifically where swaddling cloths were kept in the Tower of the Flock, where the lambs are being inspected. A manger held food for ewe and lamb, for the mother lamb and for the newborn baby lamb. This was the sign that led them directly to the specific manger, because there were lots of mangers in the area, not made of wood, like we picture it, but of stone, because wood was scarce in that particular area. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. Luke 2:12. Why are there 2 genealogies of Jesus? Matthew, who demonstrated that Jesus was King of the Jews, and Luke, who demonstrated that Jesus was the Son of Man. Right? Luke takes his genealogy all the way back to Adam and then back to God. Right? Both include genealogies, and their difference is significant. One thing about Luke's genealogy, since it goes all the way back to Adam, there is, you can argue for a young earth based on this genealogy, just this one genealogy. There's no way the earth, if it goes all the way back to creation, is going to be 4.6 billion years old when there are only like 70 so names listed in this genealogy. Okay. Why would Luke take Jesus all the way back to Adam? Because Jesus is the last Adam, 1 Corinthians 15, and he's going to be sacrificed for the descendants of Adam. Okay? So you had to be a human living on earth in order to be redeemed. Okay? To get the full story, we must begin at 2 Kings 21. The chapter chronicles the influence of Judah's wicked king with verse 16. King Manasseh shed innocent blood very much till he had filled Jerusalem from one end to the other. Beside the sin wherewith he made Judah to sin, in doing that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Manasseh repented and was forgiven, but his evil influence had so engulfed society, and especially the throne room, that his descendant, Jehoiakim, carried on where his predecessor had left off. Now, this Jehoiakim character is important because he's in the genealogy. As a result, Jeremiah 36:30 states that Jehoiakim would have his bloodline cut off and have none to sit upon the throne of David. This is why it's important that both of the parents, okay, Joseph technically not a parent, but both of these had to be descendants of David. Matthew chapter 1 lists the visible kingly line from Abraham through David, Solomon, Manasseh, Jeconias, Jacob, the father of Joseph, not the original Jacob, Joseph to Jesus. Okay, the bloodline through Joseph. While this was the visible official bloodline from the throne of David, the ultimate descendants could not sit on the throne according to the commandment of God given in Jeremiah 36:30 because of Jehoiakim. It is of great interest to note that Joseph was not the father of Jesus, though. Okay. This brings us to the true personal lineage of Jesus. It's given in Luke 3:23 through 38. It begins with Jesus from his mother Mary. So he takes this, the maternal lineage, and continues through her father Heli back to Nathan, David's son, who quietly occupied a divinely appointed purpose in God's plan to become flesh, back to David, from Nathan to David, back to Judah, back to Jacob, back to Isaac, to Abraham, Shem, Noah, back to Seth, back to Adam, back to God. Okay, that's Luke's genealogy. There are two genealogies because Jesus will sit on the throne of David as the rightful human heir and is the Son of God by virgin birth and by divine offspring. The wise men appropriately made extraordinary effort to worship him. Okay. Notice when they came to the house, they saw Mary there and the child. The one they chose to worship was the child. Okay. That he was the destination that took from that 4-month journey there. He was the reason why they had looked at the skies for centuries there. And he's the reason why Daniel, he's the one Daniel was praying to, okay? 3 times a day. So I wanted to just share that with you. The word, a couple of things here to close up. The word inn, when Luke says there was no more room in the inn, that word inn is the Greek word kataluma, and it can be better translated as guest room or guest chamber. He's not talking about there was no room in this building. He's talking about there's no more space in this room. Okay, that's the meaning of the Greek there. It's a guest room, and there's no more space in this guest room there. We tend to think of it as separate, like motel, like little rooms inside of a bigger building there, and there was no vacancies. That's the way we interpret that. Okay, but the way the Greek is actually structured, and the actual word used there for inn. And there are 2 different words used for inn. There's a different word used for inn when the Good Samaritan is rendering aid and gives money for the beat up guy to be put in the inn. There, this is the room. This is the word for guest chamber, which is on the 2nd level, the upper level, the living quarters, above where the animals and the manger would be. And so, since there was no space in that particular room. And I'm not sure what was occupying that space, Mary and Joseph had to go to the lower level where the manger was in the tower of the flock. Okay? And that's exactly where the angel said the shepherd should go. And that's where they went. There. Do any of you have OnStar navigation system in your car? Not anymore? But you're familiar with that. I found this calendar page. Oh, that was cool. It says the original OneStar navigation system. It has the OnStar symbol down there, okay? The original OneStar navigation system. The wise men were of such stature, they would not have been riding camels. They were high enough sociologically to be riding horses, okay? They were kingmakers, they were riding horses, probably decked out, but not camels necessarily. Camels probably would carry cargo, something like that. But anyway, I thought it was cute. Original OneStar navigation system.